Learn how to stop worrying about what you can't control. Master your mind now, Stoic Breath, and regain calm in a world full of uncertainty. This video shares powerful Stoic strategies to release anxiety, focus on what truly matters, and build unshakable inner peace through discipline and clarity. Discover practical mindset shifts that help you stay calm under pressure and take control of your thoughts. Subscribe to Stoicism Breath to receive new Stoic wisdom and mindset lessons as soon as they are released. Ever notice how your body is exhausted, but your mind refuses to stop? You lie there at night, staring into the dark, and your thoughts keep moving like a machine that has forgotten how to shut off. Bills, politics, your health, your children's future, the market, the economy, what people think about you. One thought becomes 10, and 10 becomes a storm. And because it feels serious, you call it responsibility. But what if it is not responsibility at all? What if it is simply the habit of trying to control what was never yours to control? We live in a world that praises worry. It calls it awareness. It calls it preparation. It calls it being informed, being mature, being realistic. But Stoicism Breath asks you to look deeper. The Stoics saw through this illusion long ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote words that still cut straight through modern chaos. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Read that slowly. Not outside events. Because the moment your peace depends on the economy, on public opinion, on timing, on outcomes, on what another person chooses to do, your peace is no longer yours. It has been outsourced. So today, the shift begins here. Not by escaping reality. Not by pretending life is easy. But by mastering your response to what life brings. The world may remain uncertain. People may remain unpredictable. Circumstances may continue to change without warning. But your mind, your judgment, your response, your discipline, that is still yours to command. And the first lesson is this: stop trying to control what was never under your authority. Most anxiety comes from one quiet mistake. You are reaching for things that were never yours to hold in the first place. Other people's opinions, your boss's decisions, the economy, your grown children's choices, the timing of opportunities, even the past. And the harder you grip them, the more powerless you feel. Because the problem is not that you are weak. The problem is that you are wrestling with the wrong things. This is where Stoicism draws a line that feels almost too simple at first. Epictetus began with a sentence so plain that many people overlook its power. Some things are up to us, and some are not. That is it. But that one distinction has the power to free a person from years of unnecessary torment. You control your effort. You control your judgment. You control your behavior. You control your response. But you do not control outcomes. You do not control whether others understand you correctly. You do not control the market tomorrow morning. You do not control whether life unfolds on your preferred timeline. And here is the uncomfortable truth many people never want to face. They confuse responsibility with control. They believe worrying about investments makes them responsible. They believe replaying an argument makes them accountable. They believe obsessing over reputation makes them strategic. But worry is not strategy. It is misplaced authority. It is the mind trying to sit on a throne that was never built for it. Imagine standing on a ship in the middle of a storm and yelling at the wind, convinced that your panic is steering the boat. That is what it looks like when you try to control external events through worry. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire during invasion, plague, betrayal, and instability. He could not control war. He could not control disease. He could not control what others thought of him, but he could control whether he met those things with panic or discipline. And that same choice exists for you right now. Here is a practical exercise. Take a sheet of paper and draw 2 columns. On the left, right, within my control. On the right, right, not within my control. Then be brutally honest. Your discipline goes on the left. Your integrity goes on the left. Your effort goes on the left. How someone interprets your words goes on the right. Tomorrow's market performance goes on the right. Whether someone validates your worth goes on the right. Then give yourself one rule. Act only on the left column. The right column you release. This does not make you passive. It makes you precise. That is the difference. When you stop throwing energy at things you cannot command, your focus sharpens. Your sleep improves. Your decisions become cleaner. You stop fighting the wind, and you start steering the wheel. That is where mental strength begins, not by controlling everything, but by finally controlling what is actually yours. Say it clearly. I control effort. I release outcomes. The moment you accept that some things were never yours, you stop wasting your life trying to own them. And that is the first real step toward mastering your mind. But there is another trap, quieter and more exhausting. Even when people stop trying to control the future, they often remain chained to the past. That is why the second lesson matters just as much. Stop replaying the past in your head. It happens quietly. A conversation from 5 years ago. A failed business decision. A sentence you wish you had never said. An opportunity you let slip through your hands. And suddenly your mind opens the file again, like a courtroom trial with no closing argument and no final verdict. You revisit it. You question yourself. You rewrite the scene. You invent better lines, smarter decisions, stronger responses. But no matter how many times you replay it, nothing changes. And that is where Stoicism offers another hard truth. Rumination is not reflection. It is self-punishment wearing the mask of responsibility. You tell yourself you are learning from the past, but many times you are not learning anything. You are simply reliving pain with better vocabulary. The Stoics understood something that modern psychology now repeats in different language. The past is not hurting you in the present because it exists. It hurts because of the interpretation you keep feeding it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you will not feel harmed." The event already happened. The deal already failed. The words were already spoken. The harm that continues to live inside you now often comes from the meaning you keep attaching to it. That is the shift. The past is data, not identity. But the mind often does something dangerous. It takes a mistake and turns it into a label. I am bad with money. I always ruin opportunities. I am not leadership material. I always say the wrong thing. That is not analysis. That is self-branding. And once you brand yourself with failure, you begin to live according to it. You do not just remember the mistake, you become loyal to it. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And that includes imagination about what is already over. So instead of replaying the event emotionally, recruit it strategically. Write down one mistake that still lives in your head. Then ask 3 questions. What did this teach me? What skill did this force me to develop? What do I understand now that I would not understand without it? This is where things begin to change. Because every failure shaped something. Every embarrassment sharpened restraint. Every wrong turn forced deeper judgment. The Stoic does not erase the past. He extracts its lesson, takes its training, and then closes the file. Not because it did not matter, but because it already gave what it came to give. There is strength in saying this chapter trained me. It does not define me. Your past is not a prison. It is a training ground. And when you stop replaying it, you recover the mental space needed to live where your power actually exists, in the present moment where choice still lives. Say it clearly. My past trains me. It does not trap me. You replay the scene again and again, almost like you're standing in a courtroom where you are both the prosecutor and the accused. You question every word you said. You rebuild every moment in your mind. You rewrite what you should have done, what you should have said, how you should have acted. But no matter how many times you run that trial in your head, the verdict never changes the outcome. The past remains exactly where it is. And yet, your mind keeps dragging it into the present, as if punishment today could somehow fix yesterday. Stoicism Breath teaches something that modern psychology is only beginning to confirm. Rumination is not reflection. It is self-punishment disguised as responsibility. Many people believe that by replaying their past mistakes, they are protecting their future. They think, if I think about this long enough, I'll never make that mistake again. But most of the time, they are not learning. They are reliving. They are reopening the wound without extracting the lesson. Marcus Aurelius once wrote a line that sounds simple, but holds deep power. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Think about that for a moment. The event already happened. The mistake is already finished. The conversation already ended. Yet the pain you feel today is not always from the event itself. It comes from the meaning you keep attaching to it, over and over again. You cannot control what you said 5 years ago. You cannot control the deal that fell apart. You cannot control how someone misunderstood your intentions. But you can control how you interpret those moments now. That is where the real shift begins. The past is data, not identity. And this is where many people get trapped without realizing it. They replay one mistake, and slowly, quietly, their mind turns that moment into a label. I'm bad with money. I'm not leadership material. I always mess things up. That is not thoughtful analysis. That is self-branding. And once you brand yourself with failure, you begin to act according to that identity. You hesitate. You doubt yourself. You hold back when opportunity appears, not because you lack ability, but because you trained yourself to believe you lack worth. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And that includes imagination about the past. Think about how many times you have suffered from something that is already over. How many nights lost to memories that can never be changed. How many hours wasted punishing yourself for something that already gave its lesson. So instead of replaying the past emotionally, Stoicism Breath invites you to approach it strategically. Try this exercise. Take one mistake that still bothers you today. Write it down clearly, not vaguely, specifically. Then ask yourself 3 questions. What did this teach me? What skill did this force me to develop? And what would I not understand today if this had never happened? Something powerful begins to happen when you do this honestly. You start to see that every painful moment left behind a skill. Every failure sharpened your judgment. Every embarrassment strengthened your restraint. Every setback forced growth that comfort never would have delivered. The Stoic does not erase the past. He recruits it. He turns it into training instead of trauma. Instead of replaying the event emotionally, he extracts the lesson strategically, and then closes the file. Not because it didn't matter, but because it already delivered what it came to deliver. There is discipline in letting go. Real discipline. Not the kind that looks strong on the outside, but the kind that rebuilds strength on the inside. There is power in saying, "That chapter trained me. It does not define me." Your past is not a prison. It is a training ground. Think of it like a gym for the mind. Every difficult moment was a weight. Every mistake was resistance. And resistance is what builds strength. But if you keep lifting the same weight forever without moving forward, you stop growing. You stay stuck in the same exercise, repeating the same movement, exhausting yourself without progress. And once you stop replaying those old moments, something surprising happens. Space appears in your mind. Quiet begins to return. That space is not emptiness, it is opportunity. Because the only place where your real power exists is right now, in the present moment where choice still lives. Say it clearly, even if it feels unfamiliar at first. My past trains me. It doesn't trap me. But just as many people get stuck in the past, others get trapped in something just as dangerous, the future that has not even happened yet. That brings us to the next challenge. Stop catastrophizing the future. Your mind is incredibly creative. That creativity is a gift, but when left uncontrolled, it becomes a weapon against your own peace. A small uncertainty appears, and within seconds, your thoughts build an entire disaster. The economy slows down, and you imagine financial collapse. A medical test is delayed, and you imagine the worst possible diagnosis. Your boss says, "We need to talk," and suddenly your mind jumps straight to termination. Notice what happens in those moments. The event hasn't even happened yet, but your body reacts as if it already has. Your heart rate increases. Your muscles tighten. Your breathing changes. That is catastrophizing, the mind treating imagination as reality. And it often feels like preparation, but preparation is calm and structured. Catastrophizing is emotional and exaggerated. The Stoics practice something that looks similar on the surface, but is completely different underneath. They called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. But they didn't imagine disasters to panic. They imagined them to prepare. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And when you look closely, that sentence explains why so many people feel exhausted without anything actually happening. Their nervous system lives inside imagined threats instead of real ones. So the difference becomes clear. Imagination can be training, or it can be torture. The difference is control. When you catastrophize, the scenario controls you. When you prepare, you control the scenario. Think about this in practical terms. Instead of asking, "What if everything goes wrong?" ask a better question. "If something goes wrong, what would I do?" That question changes fear into action. It transforms chaos into clarity. And clarity shrinks fear faster than reassurance ever could. Because once you start turning imagined disasters into planned responses, you begin to reclaim authority over your mind. Not by eliminating uncertainty, but by strengthening your readiness to face it. Notice the difference, because this is where everything begins to change. Imagination can be your greatest training tool, or it can become your quietest form of torture. The difference is not intelligence, and it is not luck. The difference is control. When you catastrophize, the situation controls you. When you prepare, you control the situation. Think about that for a moment. How many times has your mind taken a small uncertainty and turned it into a full disaster before anything even happened? A delayed email becomes a lost opportunity. A slow quarter becomes financial collapse. A strange symptom becomes the worst possible diagnosis. Your imagination runs ahead of reality, and suddenly your body reacts as if danger is already present. Your shoulders tighten. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your sleep disappears. Not because something happened, but because your mind created a future you have not even lived yet. Stoicism Breath teaches a simple but powerful shift from panic to preparation. Start with the thing you fear most right now. Do not avoid it. Do not pretend it doesn't exist. Write it down clearly. Then ask yourself one question. If this actually happened, what would I do? Be specific. If you lost your job, what would happen next? You would update your resume. You would reach out to 5 trusted contacts. You would cut unnecessary expenses. You would look for new opportunities instead of waiting in fear. If the market dropped, you would reassess your long-term strategy instead of selling emotionally. If a health issue appeared, you would consult specialists, adjust your lifestyle, and take action step by step. Notice what happens when you write these steps. The fear begins to shrink. Not because the risk disappeared, but because clarity replaced vagueness. Most anxiety lives inside the unknown. It grows in the fog of uncertainty. But when you give fear structure, it loses its drama. It stops being a monster and becomes a problem, and problems can be solved. Here is the deeper truth many people forget. You have survived 100% of your worst days so far. Every crisis you thought would destroy you, you endured. Every moment you believed you couldn't handle, you handled. That does not mean life is easy. It means you are stronger than your fear wants you to believe. Marcus Aurelius lived through war, betrayal, and deadly disease, yet he wrote about inner steadiness again and again. Not because danger didn't exist, but because he understood this fundamental truth. The future is not yours to experience in advance. You only experience it when it becomes the present. Until that moment arrives, worry is rehearsal without purpose. So replace one question in your mind. Stop asking, "What if everything goes wrong?" Instead ask, "If something goes wrong, how will I respond?" That small change restores authority to your thinking. You are no longer trying to eliminate uncertainty, because that is impossible. You are building resilience, because that is powerful. Preparation is disciplined. Panic is indulgent. Discipline strengthens you. Panic drains you. So choose discipline. Say it clearly to yourself, even if your voice shakes at first. I prepare calmly. I do not panic. The future does not need your fear. It needs your readiness. But even when you learn to prepare instead of panic, there is another hidden source of anxiety that many people overlook. It is not just what you think, it is what you consume. Stop feeding your mind with chaos. Your mind was never designed to process the entire world at once. Yet every day, from the moment you wake up, you force it to try. Breaking news alerts, market swings, political outrage, social media arguments, endless comparisons with other people's highlight reels. Within minutes of opening your eyes, your nervous system is already under pressure. Then you wonder why you feel restless before the day has even begun. An anxious mind is rarely born from reality alone. It is usually fed by exposure. The Stoics understood something powerful that modern science now confirms. Attention is a form of control. Whatever you repeatedly expose your mind to will shape your internal world. Feed your mind outrage, and it will search for enemies. Feed it comparison, and it will search for flaws in your life. Feed it chaos, and it will expect disaster everywhere. Epictetus taught that events themselves are not what disturb us. It is our judgments about them. But how can you maintain clear judgment if your mind is constantly flooded with noise? You cannot think clearly in a storm you refuse to step out of. And here is the uncomfortable truth many people avoid. Much of what you consume every day has nothing to do with your real life. You worry about global problems you cannot influence. You argue about debates you cannot resolve. You absorb fears that do not belong to you. That is not awareness. That is mental pollution. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Notice he said quality, not quantity. Just as you guard your diet carefully, you must guard your mental intake with even greater discipline. Because unhealthy food weakens the body slowly, but unhealthy information weakens the mind constantly. So here is a practical reset you can begin today. Create a news window, 20 minutes per day. No more. Outside that window, no endless scrolling, no constant updates. Start your morning without touching your phone for the first 30 minutes. Give your mind silence before you give it the world. And once a week, practice what Stoicism Breath calls a digital Sabbath. No news. No social media. No endless consumption. Instead, read something meaningful. Take a walk. Sit quietly. Let your thoughts settle without interruption. At first, it may feel strange, almost uncomfortable. But gradually something changes. Your thoughts become less reactive. Your breathing becomes steadier. Your perspective widens. Not because the world became quieter, but because you stopped feeding chaos into your system. Because when you stop feeding chaos, clarity returns. The Stoic does not disconnect from reality. He filters it. He decides what deserves attention and what does not. That is true power, not controlling everything, but choosing carefully what you allow into your mind. Your attention is your currency. Every moment you spend it, you are investing your life somewhere. Spend it on noise, and you receive confusion. Spend it on discipline, and you receive clarity. Say it clearly, my attention is my power. And when you stop consuming everything, you finally begin mastering something, your mind. There is a moment in your life that most people never learn to see. It is small, almost invisible, but it holds enormous power. It exists between what happens to you and what you choose to do next. Stoicism Breath calls this the moment of mastery, the space between reaction and response. Think about how your day usually unfolds. An email arrives with harsh wording. A message feels disrespectful. Someone cuts you off in traffic. A coworker questions your authority in front of others. Before you even realize what's happening, your body reacts. Your shoulders tense. Your jaw tightens. Your pulse rises. Your mind prepares for battle before your reason has time to speak. Then comes the reaction. A sharp reply. A defensive tone. An impulsive decision you later wish you could undo. And hours later, sometimes days later, regret appears. You replay the moment and think, why did I say that? Why did I react like that? The truth is, the reaction was not a choice. It was a reflex. But Stoic thinkers trained themselves to live inside that tiny space between the trigger and the action. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself of a powerful truth. You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. Let that sink in. It doesn't have to. That means disturbance is optional. Reaction is automatic. Response is chosen. and mastery lives in the difference between the two. When you react instantly, you surrender control to the situation. You allow the event to command your behavior. But when you respond with intention, you retain authority over yourself. This is not about pretending you have no emotions. It is not about suppressing anger or frustration. It is about governing emotion instead of being governed by it. Epictetus taught that events themselves are neutral. It is our interpretation that gives them power. That means what truly hurts you is not always what happened, but how quickly you decided what it meant. So the next time something provokes you, practice what Stoicism Breath calls the sacred pause. It has 4 simple steps. First, stop. Do nothing for a moment. Second, breathe slowly. 1 deep breath in, 1 steady breath out. Third, observe what you are feeling without judging it. Are you angry? Embarrassed? Threatened? Fourth, choose your response deliberately instead of reacting impulsively. It takes about 10 seconds. Just 10 seconds. But those 10 seconds can prevent 10 days of regret. Imagine a leader in a meeting being publicly criticized. If he reacts emotionally, raising his voice, defending himself aggressively, he loses credibility immediately. People remember the outburst more than the argument. But if he pauses, listens carefully, and responds calmly, something remarkable happens. He gains respect, even from those who disagree with him. Strength is rarely loud. It is measured. Anger feels powerful in the moment, but calm control is real power. That is why there is one simple rule worth remembering. Never respond to something important while you are emotionally struggling. Give yourself time. 10 minutes. An hour if necessary. Let the adrenaline settle. Because clarity cannot exist with hesitation. You cannot think clearly while your body is surviving motion. And remember this, urgency is often unexpected. Not every message requires an immediate answer. Not every conflict needs instant resolution. Your peace is not less important than someone else's impatience. Every time you pause instead of reacting, you strengthen your self-command. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, you retrain your nervous system. You teach your body that it answers to your judgment, not your emotions. That is what mastery looks like in real life. Say it clearly, even if it feels unfamiliar. I respond. I don't react. The world will provoke you. That is unavoidable. But it does not get to control you unless you allow it. There is another reason reactions feel so powerful. They are immediate. They give you the illusion of control. When you react, you feel decisive. You feel dominant. You feel like you are taking action. But in reality, you are surrendering your control. Because reactions are driven by emotion. Responses are driven by principle. And principles outlast emotions every single time. Think about how many conflicts in your life escalated not because of the original problem, but because of uncontrolled reactions. One harsh word leads to another. Defensiveness invites aggression. Ego fuels escalation. Within minutes, what could have been resolved calmly becomes a battle of pride. And afterward, both sides feel drained, misunderstood, and exhausted. The Stoics trained against this exact weakness. They understood that the first surge of emotion is biological. Your body reacts before your character has time to speak. That surge is natural. But what comes next, that is your responsibility. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that people act from ignorance, fear, or misunderstanding. When someone behaved badly, he didn't immediately see an enemy. He saw confusion. He saw someone lacking clarity. That shift in perspective softens your reaction before it even begins. Think about what happens when someone insults you. If you instantly respond with anger, you allow their confusion to dictate your behavior. But if you pause and ask yourself, what might be driving this person right now? Something changes inside you. You step above the situation. You regain psychological distance. The stronger mind is not the faster mind. The stronger mind is the slower mind. Speed is natural. Control is trained. Next time tension rises, try this simple approach. Instead of defending yourself immediately, ask one calm question. Can you explain what you mean? Or say, let me think about that. Those small phrases interrupt escalation. They create space. And space is power. Over time, something remarkable begins to happen. Your nervous system adapts. Situations that once triggered anger now trigger observation. Moments that once triggered anxiety now trigger analysis. You become less reactive, less volatile, less predictable to those who try to provoke you. And unpredictability, in this sense, is strength. When people expect anger and receive calm instead, they lose leverage over you. They no longer control your emotional direction. Remember this clearly: anyone can react. It takes strength to respond. Each pause you take is like a repetition in the gym of self-mastery. Every time you choose discipline instead of impulse, you strengthen your mental muscles. And over time, those repetitions transform not just your reactions, but your character itself. Say it again, slowly and intentionally. I respond. I don't react. Speed is natural. Control is trained. That single truth explains why so many people regret their reactions, but rarely regret their patience. The next time tension rises, and it will, try something different. Instead of defending yourself immediately, instead of rushing to prove your point, ask one calm question. Something simple like, can you explain what you mean? Or quietly say, let me think about that. Those small phrases may seem insignificant, but they do something powerful. They interrupt escalation. They create space. And space is power. Because when there is space, there is choice. And when there is choice, there is control. Over time, something remarkable begins to happen inside you. Your nervous system adapts. Situations that once triggered anger begin to trigger observation instead. Moments that once sparked anxiety begin to trigger analysis. You start to notice your thoughts rather than becoming them. You become less volatile, less easily shaken, less predictable to those who try to provoke you. And unpredictability, in this context, is strength. When others expect you to react emotionally, but receive calm composure instead, they lose leverage over you. They can no longer control your mood with their behavior. They can no longer pull you into chaos. And that is the moment you begin to feel real authority over yourself. Remember this clearly: anyone can react. That requires no training. But it takes strength to respond. Real strength. The kind that builds over time. Say it again, slowly if you need to. I respond. I don't react. Each pause you take becomes like a repetition in the gym of self-mastery. Every time you pause instead of reacting, you are strengthening your mental muscles. Every time you choose discipline instead of impulse, your mind becomes steadier, more resilient, less fragile. And over weeks and months, those repetitions transform not only your reactions, but your identity. Now comes another shift, one that many people resist because it challenges what they believe about peace. Stop measuring your peace by external events. Peace that depends on circumstances is fragile. It looks strong when conditions are good, but it collapses the moment life becomes difficult. Think about it honestly. You feel calm when the market is stable. You feel confident when people praise you. You feel secure when plans unfold exactly the way you hoped. But the moment something shifts, a disagreement, a setback, a financial dip, your peace disappears. That means your peace was never truly yours. It was outsourced. And anything outsourced can be taken away. The Stoics refused to build their inner stability on unstable foundations. Seneca wrote that wealth, reputation, and status are what he called preferred indifferences. Useful, yes. Helpful, yes. But not essential to who you are. Character is essential. Discipline is essential. Integrity is essential. External events are not. If your mood rises and falls with headlines, with other people's approval, with circumstances you cannot control, then you are living reactively. And reactive living creates anxiety. Not occasionally, but constantly. True Stoic peace is not the absence of problems. It is independence from them. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal from people close to him. He faced war at the borders of his empire. He faced disease spreading through entire cities. Yet in his private writings, he repeated one reminder again and again: you have power over your mind. Notice how often he repeated that message. Not because he forgot it, but because he needed to remember it daily. He wasn't trying to control the empire. He wasn't trying to control fate. He was trying to control his interpretation of events. That is the real shift. Instead of asking yourself, "Is everything going well?" ask a better question. Am I acting with integrity? External peace depends on conditions. Internal peace depends on principles. When your stability is built on character, discipline, patience, courage, circumstances lose their ability to shake you. That does not mean you ignore problems. You still act. You still adapt. You still adjust. But you do not collapse emotionally every time something goes wrong. Try this exercise for 1 week. Instead of measuring your day by results, measure it by conduct. Ask yourself simple questions at the end of the day. Did I stay disciplined today? Did I speak with restraint? Did I act according to my values, even when it was uncomfortable? If the answer is yes, then the day was successful, even if the results were messy, even if things didn't go as planned. That is how you reclaim authority over your emotional state. Because the world will never promise smooth conditions. Markets will fluctuate. People will disappoint. Plans will fail. But there is one promise you can make to yourself. You can promise steady character. Say it clearly: my peace comes from within. When your stability becomes internal, events may disturb your plans, but they cannot disturb your core. And that is freedom. Real freedom, not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of steadiness. But there is an even deeper layer that many people overlook. When your peace depends on external events, you quietly become a negotiator with reality. You begin making silent deals in your mind. If this works out, then I'll relax. If they approve of me, then I'll feel confident. If the numbers improve, then I'll feel secure. You postpone your calm. You delay your peace. You wait for the world to behave before allowing yourself to feel steady. But here is the truth that Stoicism Breath teaches again and again. The world does not sign contracts with your expectations. It does not promise cooperation. It does not guarantee stability. And the longer you wait for perfect conditions, the longer your peace remains out of reach. Real strength begins when you stop negotiating with reality and start strengthening yourself instead. The truth is, the world does not sign contracts with your expectations. It never promised to behave according to your plans, your hopes, or your timelines. And this is exactly why Stoic discipline feels so radical when you first understand it. It refuses to bargain with uncertainty. It does not beg life to cooperate. Instead, it strengthens the one thing that can truly become reliable: you. Most people spend their lives asking one familiar question: why is this happening to me? But Stoicism Breath invites you to replace that question with something far more powerful. What does this situation require from me? That single shift changes everything. Suddenly, setbacks stop feeling like attacks on your identity. They become tests of composure. Criticism stops feeling like rejection. It becomes a test of humility. Economic instability stops feeling like a threat to your survival. It becomes a test of prudence, your ability to think clearly under pressure. When you begin to frame life as training instead of threat, something happens inside your nervous system. Your body stops scanning constantly for danger. Instead, it begins scanning for growth. You move from fear into focus, from tension into readiness. That is the difference between fragile peace and disciplined peace. Fragile peace says, I'm calm because things are going well. Disciplined peace says, I'm calm because I am steady. And steadiness is not given. It is built, one decision at a time, one response at a time, one disciplined thought at a time. So the next time life disrupts your plans, and it will, pause before reacting. Take one breath. Then say quietly to yourself, this is not happening to destroy my peace. It is happening to strengthen my character. That single sentence restores something many people feel they've lost: emotional sovereignty. The ability to own your response, even when you cannot control the event. But there is another belief hidden beneath chronic worry that deserves to be challenged. Many people live as if worry protects them, as if thinking about problems long enough will somehow prevent them. They replay scenarios. They anticipate disasters. They remain mentally tense, as if constant vigilance alone creates safety. But look honestly at your own life. Has worry ever truly prevented pain? Or has it simply made you suffer twice, once in imagination and once in reality, if the event even happened at all? The Stoics were never naive about hardship. They expected life to contain struggle. But they refused to believe that anxiety was protection. Anxiety is not preparation. It is emotional rehearsal without discipline. Real preparation leads to action. Worry leads to exhaustion. There is another uncomfortable truth hidden here. Worry feels productive. It creates the illusion that you are doing something, that you are staying alert, that you are being responsible. But vigilance without action is paralysis. And paralysis slowly erodes confidence. Seneca once observed that many people spend their lives preparing to live, but never actually living. That is what chronic worry does. It keeps you in a permanent state of anticipation, always preparing for life, rarely participating in it. This is where the Stoic practice of memento mori cuts through illusion. Remember that you will die, not to create fear, but to create clarity. If today were your last day, Would you spend it mentally rehearsing every possible disaster? Or would you act? Would you call the person you've been avoiding? Would you start the project you keep delaying? Would you forgive the mistake that still burdens you? Would you step outside, breathe deeply, and take the walk you promised yourself weeks ago? Worry steals presence, and presence is the only place life actually exists. You cannot live next month. You cannot live next year. You cannot live inside imagined catastrophe. You can only live now. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of impermanence not to create panic, but to create priority. When you truly understand that time is limited, you stop wasting it on mental noise. You become selective. Selective with your attention. Selective with your fears. Selective with what truly deserves concern. And here is a final discipline worth carrying into every morning of your life. When you wake up, ask yourself one simple question. If something challenges me today, how will I respond with strength? Not, what if everything goes wrong? But, how will I show up if it does? That shift transforms fear into readiness. It moves your mind from helplessness into capability, from avoidance into action. Because worry does not protect you. Character protects you. Preparation protects you. Resilience protects you. Clarity protects you. An anxious mind is not a safer mind. A disciplined mind is. Say it clearly, even if it feels unfamiliar at first. I live. I act. I release. The world will always contain uncertainty. Markets will shift. People will change. Plans will fail. But you do not have to carry uncertainty inside your chest every moment of your life. You can release what was never yours to control. You can prepare calmly for what may come. And then you can live, fully, deliberately, and with strength, in the present moment where your real power exists. Release what was never yours to carry. Prepare calmly for what may come. And then live, fully, deliberately, and without hesitation, in the present moment. That is how you begin to master your mind, not through force, not through denial, but through clarity. But there is one more uncomfortable truth about worry that many people avoid facing. Over time, worry does not just visit your mind, it becomes your identity. Some people don't just worry occasionally. They become known as the worrier. They say things like, I've always been anxious. That's just who I am. Or, I can't help it. That's my personality. Stoicism Breath challenges that belief directly. It rejects the idea that your emotional habits define who you are. You are not your impulses. You are not your fears. You are not the racing thoughts that appear in your mind at 3 in the morning. You are the one observing those thoughts. And anything you can observe, you can train. Worry is not destiny. It is a practice pattern. And the good news is simple. Anything practiced can be unpracticed. Think about it this way. Each time you interrupt a spiral of worry, even for a few seconds, you weaken its grip. Each time you replace catastrophic thinking with structured preparation, you retrain your brain. Each time you bring your attention back to the present moment instead of chasing imagined disasters, you reclaim authority over yourself. Imagine worry like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Feed it daily, and it grows powerful. But neglect it, refuse to give it attention, and strengthen discipline instead, and that muscle begins to shrink. Slowly at first, then noticeably. This is not about eliminating all concern from your life. That is unrealistic. It is about refusing to let concern dominate your identity. You can care deeply without collapsing emotionally. You can plan wisely without panicking internally. You can acknowledge uncertainty without living inside it. And here is the final perspective worth holding on to. If worry truly protected people, then the most anxious individuals would be the safest. But look around carefully. That is not what you see. The most anxious people are rarely the safest. They are often the most exhausted. Calm strength protects you far more than constant tension ever will. So choose calm deliberately. Choose presence intentionally. Choose disciplined thinking repeatedly, even when it feels uncomfortable. Even when old habits try to pull you backward. Say it again, clearly and with conviction. I live. I act. I release. And when worry tries to return, and it will, you don't need to fight it violently. You don't need to panic about panic. You simply refuse to feed it. You acknowledge it, observe it, and then return your attention to what matters. That is mastery, not perfection, but consistency. Because the truth is simple. You cannot control the economy. You cannot control other people. You cannot control the past. And you cannot control every uncertainty waiting somewhere in the future. But you can control your mind. And that is not a small power. It is the only power that truly matters. Worry will always try to disguise itself as responsibility. It will whisper that tension keeps you safe. It will convince you that constant thinking equals control. But now you know better. Real control is not endless thinking, it is disciplined action. Control your effort. Release outcomes. Learn from the past without living inside it. Prepare calmly for the future without fearing it. Guard your attention as if it were your most valuable possession. Pause before reacting. Build peace from character, not circumstance. This is not passive living. It is disciplined living. It is intentional living. It is powerful living. The world will remain unpredictable. Markets will fluctuate. People will disappoint. Plans will fail. That has always been true, and it always will be. But your mind does not have to mirror the chaos. Your thoughts do not have to become storms just because life becomes uncertain. The Stoics were not fearless because life was easy. They were steady because their authority was internal. They trained their minds to remain grounded even when everything around them shifted. And that same authority is available to you. Not someday. Not when conditions improve. Not when life becomes easier. Now. Say it clearly, with purpose. I control my mind. Because mastering your mind is not a one-time decision. It is not a single moment of motivation. It is a daily discipline. A quiet commitment repeated again and again until calm becomes your default, clarity becomes your habit, and strength becomes your nature.